At my parents' New Year's Eve party, they begged me to fly home. After an 8-hour flight, no hello, no hug, just a blunt order. You'll watch the 5 kids for your sister and brother. The rest of us are going on vacation. They mocked. Don't pee or poop on our kids. That smell would be awful. They all burst out laughing. I calmly said one sentence. Everything exploded. My dad went pale. No way. I'm Taylor Brooks. I was 32 then. I just stumbled off a red-eye from Madrid, jet-lagged to the bone clothes, still smelling like airplane coffee, back screaming from the cramped seat. My suitcase was heavy with gifts for 5 kids whose every birthday and holiday I'd flown across the ocean to celebrate, no matter the cost or exhaustion. I stood on the doorstep of my parents' suburban Atlanta home, the countdown music thumping from inside, balloons glowing under string lights. The air thick with champagne and excitement for the new year. The door flew open. My mom's eyes locked on the suitcase first, not my face. My dad was right behind her, sunglasses pushed up on his head. Even though it was night, duffel bag already packed and ready, my sister and brother herded the kids toward me like I was the built-in shift replacement. 5 chaotic little bodies piling against my legs, sticky hands grabbing. The crude joke landed, and the laughter rolled out loud and easy like I'd always been the punchline to their plans. I set the suitcase down right there in the entryway, the party noise spilling out around us. I looked straight at my dad and said the one sentence I'd practiced silently the whole flight home. I'm not babysitting tonight, and the Hawaii trip isn't happening. The laughter cut off like someone yanked the plug. Glasses stopped clinking. The countdown on the TV kept going, but no one inside noticed anymore. My dad's face lost all color. He stared at me, mouth half open, repeating softly, no way. As if saying it louder might make it untrue. That single quiet sentence changed everything. Their dream vacation vanished. The role I'd played for years, the reliable one who showed up and fixed things, ended right there on the doorstep. Stay with me until the very end. I'll tell you exactly why those words carried so much weight, how I walked away that New Year's Eve, and why I never once looked back. Have you ever flown across an ocean for the holidays only to be turned into free child care and an open wallet the second you landed? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one and replied to as many as I can. But you won't understand the weight of that one sentence unless you know how over the years they'd slowly made me feel like little more than a convenient function in the family machine. It started innocently enough back when I still believed I was helping out of love rather than obligation. My dad called one evening while I was wrapping up work in Madrid. His voice was warm, excited even. Honey, we found this perfect little vacation home in Florida right on the coast. Great for weekends and holidays with the grandkids. The interest rate's better if we add you as a co-signer. It's just paperwork of formality. You'll hardly notice it. I remember pausing, staring at my laptop screen, feeling a swell of pride. Finally, I could contribute something big to the family, something tangible. After moving abroad and building my career in digital marketing, I signed the documents online that same night, imagining barbecues on the deck, the kids splashing in the waves. It felt like I was securing a piece of home for all of us, even from thousands of miles away. At first, everything seemed fine. I'd get occasional updates, photos of my sister Alyssa and her husband fixing up the place. My brother Cody loading the kids into the car for a quick getaway. My parents would send selfies from the porch, captioning them, "Family Paradise. Thanks to you." I smiled at my phone in my tiny Madrid apartment, cooking simple meals to save money, walking everywhere in the rain because cabs added up. I told myself it was worth it. They were happy the grandkids had memories, and I was part of it. Then came the first real crack. I was hurrying through the slick streets of Madrid one drizzly afternoon, umbrella fighting the wind, when my phone buzzed with a bank alert. My credit score had dropped significantly. I stopped under a shop awning, heart racing, pulling up the details. There it was, a late payment on the Florida mortgage. Not mine, but tied to my name. Shortfalls because the monthly bill came up short and somehow it hit my credit, too. I called my dad, voice shaking. He sounded surprised, apologetic. "Oh, things got tight this month with the kids' activities. We'll catch up next time." I hung up, standing there in the cold rain, watching the notification glow red on my screen. For the first time, panic mixed with something sharper, a quiet humiliation. Here I was scraping by in a foreign city asking my boss for an advance on my salary to cover rent while back home they posted sunset pictures from the beach house with captions like "family time priceless." I didn't say anything confrontational. I just wired the difference, quietly telling myself it was temporary. From then on, the pattern settled in without fanfare. Requests came wrapped in affection texts about school fees running high for Dylan, Michaela, and Caleb, or Cody needing a buffer for his freelance dry spells. My mom would chime in with stories about how the grandkids asked for Aunt Taylor. I'd transfer what I could, cutting corners on my own life, fewer dinners out with friends, cheaper groceries, skipping that weekend trip to Barcelona because something came up. Snorts, nights blurred into staring at my banking app, wondering why my savings never grew despite the steady job. Friends in Madrid would ask why I didn't visit home more often or why I seemed stressed during video calls. I'd brush it off with laughs. Family stuff, you know how it is. But inside, doubt crept in. Was I the reliable daughter or just the one farthest away, easiest to tap without seeing the strain? The turning point hit hardest right before that fateful New Year's. It was the middle of the night in Madrid around 2 a.m. when my phone lit up with a FaceTime from my mom. I answered groggy, expecting a quick holiday check-in. Instead, she was teary voice breaking. "We miss you so much, honey. The house feels empty without you for New Year's. The kids keep asking when Aunt Taylor's coming, the little ones especially. It would mean the world if you flew home." I softened immediately, picturing the chaos of the party, the hugs I'd missed last year. But midway through the call, another notification popped up silently. Overdue payment on the Florida house. Again, my stomach twisted. For the first time, I didn't interrupt to promise I'd handle it. I let her talk, nodding along, heart pounding with a mix of guilt and rising anger. Guilt for even hesitating. After all, they were family. Anger at realizing how often these emotional pleas aligned with financial gaps. I ended the call with, "I'll think about it," and lay awake in my small bed, the city quiet outside, listening to my pulse race. That night, something shifted. The role I'd accepted without question started feeling less like love and more like a quiet erosion of my peace, my choices, my sense of self. Looking back, those moments weren't about the amounts wired or the signatures given. They were about the slow realization that my place in the family had narrowed to what I could provide from afar. Enough to keep me living modestly in Madrid, while rarely stepping foot in that Florida house I'd helped secure. Enough to make me question in the quiet hours whether I was truly seen as their daughter or simply the dependable lifeline they reached for when things got tight. I didn't step inside. I didn't pull out my phone or open any folders. I didn't raise my voice or list a single grievance. After those words hung in the air, "I'm not babysitting tonight," and "the Hawaii trip isn't happening," I simply turned the handle of my suitcase and pulled it back toward the darkness outside. My mom's hand shot out and grabbed my sleeve. "Honey, don't joke like this. Everything's already booked. Flights, hotel, the whole package." Her grip was light, almost pleading the way it used to be when she wanted me to stay longer on visits years ago. But her eyes darted past me to the open door, as if worried the neighbors might overhear. My dad stood frozen just inside the threshold, the color still drained from his face. His voice came out shaky, lower than the party music still thumping behind him. "What are you saying, Taylor?" He took one half step forward like he might block the doorway, but stopped. The sunglasses on his head looked ridiculous now, a prop from the vacation he thought was guaranteed. Behind them, my sister stopped mid-laugh, her mouth open. My brother shifted the youngest kid on his hip, suddenly unsure where to look. The 5 children sensed the shift. They went quiet, staring up at me with wide eyes, confused why the usual hugs and gifts weren't flowing yet. No one inside the house seemed to notice. The countdown chatter and clinking glasses continued oblivious. I met my mom's gaze for a second, then gently pulled my arm free. "I'm tired," I said softly. "I'm going home. That's all. No explanations, no accusations." I turned and walked down the lighted path toward the street, wheels of the suitcase rumbling over the brick. The front door stayed open behind me. I could feel the warmth and noise spilling out, but no one followed right away. The silence from the entryway felt heavier than any argument could have. The cold Atlanta night hit me immediately, sharp after the heated house. January air crisp and dry, carrying the distant pops of early fireworks from neighboring streets. I stood at the curb, breath visible, and opened the Uber app with fingers that trembled slightly. The car was 8 minutes away. Plenty of time to second-guess everything. As I waited, the weight of what I'd just done settled in layers. My heart raced like I'd sprinted, adrenaline surging. Even though I'd barely raised my voice, relief washed over me. First, a dizzying lightness like stepping off a treadmill I'd been running on for years without realizing. But right behind it came fear, raw and unfamiliar. Fear of the unknown, of what came after cutting the cord so abruptly. Fear that maybe I just burned the only bridge I had to the word family. Tears started, then silent, and hot, sliding down my cheeks as I stared at the holiday lights strung along the quiet suburban street. I didn't sob. I could not, with the driver approaching. But the release felt physical, like pressure escaping a sealed bottle. I'd held it together on the doorstep, but alone under the street lamp, the exhaustion of the flight, the years, the moment it all caught up. The Uber pulled up, a nondescript sedan with steaming windows. The driver popped the trunk without a word, loaded my suitcase like this was any normal pickup. I slid into the back seat, gave the downtown address I'd memorized but never shared with anyone back home. As we pulled away, I glanced in the side mirror. The front door of my parents' house was finally closing, lights dimming behind frosted glass. Fireworks burst overhead in red and gold, marking the turn of the year. But they felt distant, like they belonged to someone else's celebration. The drive into the city took us past familiar landmarks, strip malls decked in leftover Christmas sales, gas stations bright against the dark. Atlanta's skyline grew ahead, tall buildings glowing. My apartment was in a high-rise downtown, a place I'd bought quietly 8 months earlier with savings I'd protected by living lean abroad. No one in the family knew. I'd mentioned thinking about moving back someday, but never the papers signed, the keys, collected, the quiet possession of a space that was only mine. In the car, the driver kept the radio low. Some pop countdown of the year's hits. I leaned my head against the cool window, watching the suburbs give way to urban streets. The fear ebbed slowly, replaced by a strange calm. My phone stayed silent in my pocket. No frantic calls yet. Maybe they were still processing. Maybe they thought I'd cool off and come back. The thought made my chest ache, not with regret, but with sadness for how predictable it all felt. By the time we reached the building, the tears had dried. I thanked the driver, wheeled my suitcase through the lobby with its modern lighting and quiet New Year's Eve security desk. The elevator ride up was smooth, silent. When the doors opened on my floor, the hallway smelled faintly of fresh paint, still new, still empty in the best way. I unlocked the door to the apartment no one else had ever visited. Dark rooms, bare walls, a single lamp I'd left on a timer. I dropped the suitcase in the living room, stood there in the quiet, and finally let out a long, shaky breath. The city hummed far below fireworks, sporadic now. For the first time in years, the night stretched ahead with no obligations, no requests, waiting, no role to slide back into. The key turned smoothly in the lock, and I pushed the door open to a space that still felt more like a possibility than a home. The apartment was mostly empty, bare hardwood floors, white walls catching the glow from the single lamp on a timer, the faint scent of new carpet lingering. I left the suitcase by the entrance and walked straight to the wide windows overlooking downtown Atlanta. The city lights spread out below like scattered jewels. Traffic thin on New Year's morning, distant horns and cheers fading into the night. I sank down onto the cold floor, back against the glass, knees drawn up. The chill seeped through my jeans, grounding me in the kitchenette bare, except for a few essentials I'd stocked on a quick visit months earlier. I filled the cheap electric kettle I'd bought online. While it hummed, I spooned instant coffee into a plain mug, the kind you get in packs from the grocery store because anything nicer felt like an unnecessary expense back then. The hot liquid was bitter comforting in its simplicity. I carried it back to the window and sat again, watching the skyline flicker with leftover fireworks. In that quiet, memories surfaced unbidden, not the big moments I'd dissected so many times, but the smaller ones where I'd almost drawn the line. There was the time, maybe 2 years ago, when a request came for help with a new car down payment. I'd stared at the message for hours, fingers hovering over the transfer button, a tight knot in my stomach, whispering that this was too much. But then came the follow-up photo of the grandkids in the old, unreliable van, captions about safety and reliability. I sent the money anyway, telling myself it was for them, not for the convenience of others. The relief from avoiding conflict lasted only until the next ask. Another near miss and unexpected medical bill for routine checkups that somehow ballooned. I drafted a polite, "I can't this time" email.
Even slept on it.
In the morning, guilt won. I deleted the draft and wired the amount, justifying it as one-off. Each time I backed down the boundary I'd imagined pushing blurred a little more until saying no felt impossible, selfish even. Snorts. Now sitting on this empty floor with the city as my only witness, I'd finally done it. The reality settled in waves, a hollow emptiness first, like losing something familiar, even if it had weighed me down. The family chat would be blowing up by now. Questions flying about, canceled reservations they couldn't explain. I'd made the call to the resort and airline quietly days before boarding the flight from Madrid, using the card in my name that had covered the deposit. No confrontation needed, just a calm conversation with customer service about changing plans. They didn't ask why. The freedom came slower, creeping in alongside the void. Space to breathe without anticipating the next vibration of my phone. No mental tally of who might need what next. I pulled the device from my pocket screen, still dark. Scrolling through banking apps in the dim light, I navigated to the recurring payment section. With steady fingers, I unselected the family streaming bundle we'd all shared, movies and shows I'd rarely watched myself. Then the shared online shopping membership, the one that delivered toys and household items straight to their doors, while I ordered basics in bulk to save.
Confirm. Confirm.
No notifications sent to anyone else, just quiet unsubscribes on my end. I wondered what the house felt like right now. Confusion turning to frustration as they pieced together the Hawaii bookings vanishing. Phone calls to the airline, maybe hearing the same polite script about the cardholder's request. Arguments in the kitchen after the guests left, voices low so the kids wouldn't hear. Or perhaps stunned silence, the kind that follows when a long-assumed safety net disappears without warning. Leaning my head back against the cool glass, I sipped the cooling coffee. The emptiness wasn't scary anymore. It felt like room for something new, undefined. My career had given me stability abroad, but this place represented a choice made for myself alone, funded by the parts of my income I'd shielded over time. No snorts announcements, no explanations required. The phone remained silent in my hand for the first time in years. No buzz cut through the night with the word "emergency" lighting up the screen. Just the soft hum of the city far below and the steady rhythm of my own breathing filling the space. My phone buzzed one afternoon while I was deep in a work call from the apartment, the ringtone cutting through the headset. I glanced at the screen after hanging up. Sarah, my closest friend from the Madrid expat crowd. She'd sent a screenshot without context at first, just a string of question marks. I opened it. My dad's Facebook post, public for all his friends and extended family to see. Some adult children choose their own lifestyle over family responsibility during the biggest holidays. Pray for us. No names, no details, but the timing left no doubt. The comments rolled in steadily. Old neighbors, church friends, distant cousins offering sympathy. One from someone I didn't even know. So sad how kids these days forget what parents sacrificed. You're my prayers. I sat back on the couch I'd finally assembled from a secondhand shop. The screenshot frozen on my screen. A rush of heat rose in my chest, fingers, itching to type a response, to defend myself, to attach years of transfer records, and explain exactly who had been supporting whom. The urge was physical, palms, sweating, breath short, as if posting the truth would finally make them see. I drafted it in my head, polite at first, then sharper, laying out the pattern without anger. But as the words formed, a colder clarity settled. Who is this for? The strangers offering prayers without knowing the full story. The mutual acquaintances who'd side with the vague victim narrative because it was easier. My family themselves who already knew the numbers, but had framed them differently for years. The comment that hit hardest wasn't the pity, it was the assumption. Snorts, kids these days have no gratitude. It echoed things I'd heard growing up, subtle reminders of duty and sacrifice. I'd internalized enough of it to feel a stab of shame, even now alone in my living room. Was I ungrateful? Had I abandoned them by refusing one role they'd assigned me? I paced the apartment phone clutched tight, rereading the thread. Replies piled up heart emojis. Thinking of you. Offers of support. No one asking questions. No one curious about the other side. It was comfortable for them, the grieving parents, the wayward child abroad, chasing some selfish dream. The truth would complicate that demand nuance no one wanted on a casual scroll. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. One message could shift the narrative, attach receipts, force accountability. But then would a public back and forth family group chats exploding. More posts twisting my words. The exhaustion of explaining something they'd never acknowledged privately felt heavier than the silence. I closed the app instead, blocked the post from my feed, not dramatically, just quietly removed it from view. No unfriending, no big statements. The isolation deepened in that moment, a sharp ache of being misunderstood by people who'd known me longest. Yet beneath it ran a new thread, choosing not to fix their story for them. For once, letting the discomfort sit on their side, without rushing in to smooth it over. The loneliness grew that evening, sharper than the quiet nights right after moving in. I cooked a simple dinner at the small table by the window, watching lights come on across the city. Friends like Sarah checked in with careful texts, sensing something big, but not pushing. I appreciated the space, even as it highlighted how few people truly knew the full weight I'd carried. Sleep didn't come easily. I lay in the dark replaying the post, imagining conversations that would never happen. The old habit of anticipating needs, of preempting disappointment. It lingered like muscle memory. But morning brought a subtle shift. The urge to respond had faded, replaced by acceptance their version could exist in their circle. Mine didn't need public defense. Protecting my peace meant letting the misrepresentation stand unanswered. That choice to stay silent, instead of stepping in to repair the image, marked something new. The isolation felt deeper, yes, but it also felt chosen, deliberate. A boundary not shouted, but held. Messages started trickling in, sparse and careful, like they were testing thin ice. The first came from my mom on a quiet weekday morning. Just a short text. The bank called asking for updated paperwork on the vacation home. Do you know anything about that? No accusation, no exclamation points, just the question hanging there. I read it over coffee at my kitchen table, the city already bustling below. The words felt neutral on the surface, but I could hear the worry underneath, the confusion of someone used to things being handled without her lifting a finger. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because anything I said would open a door I wasn't ready to walk through. The anger from earlier weeks had dulled, leaving a quieter ache. Sadness really for the way life had shaped them into people who reached out only when systems started creaking. A few days later, a longer message from Melissa popped up during my lunch break. The private school is demanding full tuition now. No more partial payments. The kids might have to switch classes mid-year if we can't cover it. She added details about how disruptive it would be for Dylan, Michaela, and Caleb, the friends. They'd lose the routine's upset. It was the kind of note designed to pull at guilt, practical and emotional in one go. I pictured her typing it in the chaos of her home. Kids running around, stress building as bills landed, without the usual buffer. Again, I left it on red. The impulse to fix to log in and cover the gap, like always, flickered briefly but weaker now. Instead, a wave of sorrow washed over me. Not for the tuition itself, but for how unprepared they seemed for consequences they'd avoided so long. Then came the call from Cody late one night when I was winding down with a book. His name on the screen surprised me. We hadn't spoken directly in months. I let it ring twice before answering. His voice sounded drained background noise of city traffic.
Faint.
He must have been on a break. Hey sis, there's some kind of misunderstanding going on. I'm out here driving deliveries till 2 a.m. just to make up the difference. Whatever you think happened, we can talk it out. No blame, just exhaustion. A plea wrapped in practicality. I listened, mostly murmuring neutral sounds. He talked about the extra shifts, the wear on his car, how the kids asked about me sometimes. When he paused, waiting for reassurance, I said softly, "Take care of yourself," and ended the call. No explanations, no promises. Hanging up, I sat in the dim living room light, phone heavy in my hand. The rage I'd carried initially was gone, burned out. What remained was pity mixed with grief for siblings who'd grown accustomed to a cushion that let them coast, for parents who'd structured life around it without realizing the cost to everyone. They weren't villains. They were ordinary people, flawed in ways that felt painfully human. Snorts weak when strength was needed, reliant on patterns they didn't know how to break. Snorts, that realization hurt more than anger ever had. It made the distance feel permanent, not punitive. I opened my laptop and composed a formal email to the lawyer I'd consulted quietly months earlier. The message was straightforward. Proceed with the request to remove my name from the vacation home loan. Attach the necessary forms, reference the cosigner clause. No personal notes, no copies to family, just legal steps, clean and detached. Sending it brought no triumph, only a somber finality. The property had symbolized togetherness. Once weekends, none of us truly shared equally. Now it represented ties I could no longer sustain. I closed the laptop and walked to the window, watching headlights stream along the streets far below. The sadness lingered deep and quiet for the family I'd known, and the version that had depended on me in ways I couldn't continue. They weren't malicious, just limited habits built over decades. Expectations unspoken, but firm. Recognizing that didn't make reconciliation possible. It made acceptance easier. The messages would likely keep coming in fits, and starts probing for the old response. But the shift inside me held steady. No more stepping in to patch what they'd learned to lean on. The grief softened over the following days into something manageable, a background hum rather than a sharp pain. Work demands filled the hours. Friends like Sarah provided light conversation without prying. Life in the apartment moved forward, deliberate and unhurried. An email from the lawyer arrived on a regular weekday subject line, straightforward and professional. The bank had reviewed the remaining borrower's qualifications for the vacation home loan. They couldn't approve refinancing in my dad's name alone. Foreclosure proceedings would begin soon to recover the debt. The words were clinical expected, but reading them still sent a quiet jolt through me. The Florida property, once a symbol of shared escapes, was slipping away, not through drama, but through simple financial reality. I set the phone down and went about my day. The news settling like dust. No celebration, no satisfaction, just acknowledgement that the consequences I'd set in motion months earlier were unfolding exactly as warned. Word filtered in indirectly about the truck. A mutual acquaintance mentioned it in passing during a work video call, how my dad's pickup had been towed one morning from the driveway repo company. Efficient and unemotional. He'd relied on that vehicle for years, hauling things for the grandkids' trips to the hardware store, the occasional tow for a friend's boat. Losing it meant more than inconvenience. It stripped away a piece of independence he'd taken for granted. Alyssa's adjustments showed up in small online traces. Listings appeared on her marketplace accounts, designer handbags she'd posed with in brighter times, heels from vacations, home decor items once featured in proud posts. Gently used. Captions, prices dropped lower than she'd ever admit publicly. Each sale chipped away at the lifestyle curated so carefully, a slow unwinding visible only to those paying attention. The kids' school change came through a casual update from a cousin, Dylan, Michaela, Caleb, Tyler, and Bailey transitioning to public classrooms mid-year. New routines, different friends, the kind of shift parents dread for its disruption. No more specialized programs or familiar teachers. Practical choices born of necessity. My dad posted less frequently now. The vague complaints about betrayal, thinner, garnering fewer likes and supportive comments. The energy for maintaining the narrative seemed drained, replaced by whatever daily grind filled the gaps. He looked tired in the rare photos that surfaced through distant relatives' shoulders, a bit more slumped, the defiance muted. No one reached out with an apology, no knocks on my apartment door, no long emails owning the pattern. The absence of direct confrontation felt both relieving and final, a confirmation that bridges weren't being rebuilt from their side either. On my end, work brought good news: a promotion to a fully remote senior role, more responsibility, and pay without relocating. The extra income let me furnish the place gradually, a comfortable second-hand sofa that fit perfectly by the window, a few low-maintenance plants on the sill catching southern light. The apartment warmed, no longer echoing, but lived in with books stacked and throws draped over chairs. Sleep improved steadily. Nights stretched uninterrupted dreams, less tangled with old worries. Yet habits died hard. Occasional jolts awake at a random notification buzz muscle memory, scanning for the word emergency that never came. The reflex faded slowly, like any learned response unpracticed. Days blended into productive rhythm. Morning walks through downtown streets. Coffee from local spots. Evenings with projects or calls to friends abroad. The isolation from family no longer stung sharply. It had become background, a chosen quiet amid the city's hum. The foreclosure notice arrived formally, later confirming the process underway. The house would go to auction, eventually memories attached to it dispersing with the sale. I read the update once, filed it away, and moved on. No gloating, no lingering regret. Just forward motion. Life in the apartment felt balanced, now self-contained. Small rituals grounded me, watering the plants weekly, arranging the sofa pillows, just so cooking meals without rushing to free up funds elsewhere. The promotion brought confidence at work, ideas flowing easier, without the constant undercurrent of pending requests. Old reflexes surfaced rarely. A brief tighten in my chest at unexpected bank alerts resolved quickly as routine. Sleep deepened, mornings brighter. The space I'd created, physical and emotional, held steady. The final email from the lawyer arrived without fanfare, nestled among routine work messages on a crisp morning. The subject line was plain: closure on Brooke's vacation property loan. I opened it at the kitchen counter, coffee steaming beside me. The vacation home in Florida had sold at auction the previous week. Proceeds cleared the remaining balance, and my name was fully released from all associated paperwork. No deficiencies, no further claims. The legal tie, once invisible but binding, was gone. I read the attachment, once a standard notice with dates and figures, then archived the thread. No rush of victory, no lingering bitterness, just a quiet sense of completion, like closing a chapter I'd outgrown. Later that afternoon, I migrated to the window nook in the living room, laptop balanced on a cushion. The apartment had evolved subtly over the months, bookshelves filled with titles I'd always meant to read. A soft rug underfoot framed prints from local artists, catching the light. Outside, Atlanta moved at its usual pace. Traffic flowing below, pedestrians bundled against the chill, the skyline sharp against a pale sky. On a whim, I pulled up a travel search. Iceland had lingered in my saved list for years. A destination I'd scrolled past whenever plans shifted for someone else's needs. Northern Lights, tours, remote cabins, vast empty spaces under dancing skies. I filtered for solo travelers, selected midweek dates with the best aurora forecasts. The options loaded flights from Atlanta to Reykjavik. Cozy hotels with geothermal views, guided excursions into the darkness for optimal viewing. I chose a window seat on the outbound flight, added a small rental car for flexibility. The booking process felt effortless. No checking calendars against family events. No adjusting for school holidays or budgets stretched elsewhere. Just my preferences, my timeline. Confirmation landed in my inbox moments later. One passenger, Taylor Brooks. The itinerary included hot springs visits, glacier walks, nights chasing green ribbons across the sky. I leaned back, watching the screen glow with details I'd chosen alone. The trip wasn't extravagant, just intentional. A chance to witness something vast and fleeting without obligation to capture it for anyone else's feed. No group photos planned, no souvenirs earmarked for grandkids. The anticipation built quietly. A private excitement I'd forgotten how to feel. The old family group chat remained muted. Conversations stalled where they'd tapered off naturally. I didn't reopen it to share the news. Didn't forward boarding passes or hotel links. The northern lights would unfold for whoever stood beneath them that week. Tourists, locals, me. No need to broadcast the wonder as proof of moving on. Reflecting from this vantage, the full arc settled into focus. The separation hadn't been born of hatred or grand gestures. It grew from repeated small choices to stop absorbing shortfalls to let natural consequences arrive without intervention. The house's sale marked the last tangible thread snapping clean and impersonal through institutional processes. Some families don't despise you for leaving. They simply resent the absence of what you once provided. The reliability, the buffer against discomfort. The friction isn't about love lost. It's about convenience, disrupted roles upended. Understanding that removed the personal sting, leaving clarity in its place. And I finally learned that silence and distance can be the most powerful, kindest response you offer yourself. Not punishment, but protection for them by no longer propping up habits that quietly eroded everyone. And for me, by cultivating a life where value isn't tied to availability or resources extended, the Iceland trip became the quiet celebration of that lesson. Standing under the aurora wouldn't require explanation or sharing. The lights would shimmer regardless of who knew or approved. In choosing it solely for my own wonder, I reclaimed the parts of myself long deferred curiosity, unfiltered plans, uncompromised joy, unshared unless I decided otherwise. Boundaries held consistently create space for growth on both sides. Their world adjusted without my constant input. Mine expanded without the old pull. The ache of disconnection faded into acceptance, a neutral peace where neither side owed the other constant access. Looking ahead, the future felt open in ways it hadn't before. Career paths, branching, friendships deepening without the overlay of family demands, travels planned on whim rather than negotiation. The apartment, once a refuge, now felt like a launch point. Some families don't hate you when you walk away. They just hate no longer being able to use you. And I finally learned that sometimes silence and distance are the strongest, gentlest answer you can give yourself.